Welcome to another Bandology interview. Bandology is a Canadian nonprofit dedicated to more music for more kids via education, collaboration, and community.
Hi everyone, my name is Lucas Redwood and I'm the manager of music and learning with Bandology. Bandology is a Canadian nonprofit music organization dedicated to supporting music education. I'm joined here today with Brandon Toews. How are you doing today, Brandon?
Doing great, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, nice to have you here. So Brandon is a drummer and a percussionist and also the project manager for Drumeo. Brandon, can you start off by telling us a bit about yourself and your background in music?
Yeah, so I grew up playing piano first. I probably played for 6 years just playing piano. But when I was about I'd say probably like 8 or 9 years old, I started being exposed to rock music and stuff I had never heard before. And when I would listen to those records by these rock bands and stuff, the thing that would stand out to me the most was the drums. And I just thought that I hadn't even really watched a lot of videos at that point of drummers playing in bands and stuff, but just by listening to those albums and listening to those songs, I'm like, the drum part sounds the best. I want to do that. So then for a few years, I was taking piano lessons, and if I kept doing that, my parents would let me take drum lessons. So I was doing both at the same time, but really I loved playing drums the most, right? That's where my true passion was. From there, I grew up playing in church. That's kind of where I started playing with other musicians. I was really into rock music and progressive rock music. Rush was one of my biggest early influences, as most Canadian teenage drummers, right?
Yeah.
I think that's like a rite of passage if you're a drummer in Canada.
Totally, yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but yeah, I was into that. Then I was also playing in jazz band and concert band, drumline, all that kind of stuff through school, but was never really a fan of jazz music. I played it because that was just one of the things you did in school. If you wanted to play drum kit, you played in jazz band. Um, but then the first drummer that actually turned me on to jazz was Larnell Lewis, and I heard his album "We Like It Here" with Snarky Puppy, and I'm like, "Whoa, this is crazy!" And they call this jazz or fusion or whatever. And from that point on, I got more into progressive music. Got really into Animals as Leaders. Got really into some modern jazz stuff once I went to university. I studied jazz and contemporary popular music at MacEwan University. Um, yeah, I got my degree in music performance, so learned lots about different styles of music and stuff like that. And yeah, nowadays I play a little bit of everything, mostly in the education world. Really passionate about jazz music. I love playing pop music and rock music. But personally, I think that every style of music has something to offer us as drummers and as musicians. So yeah, I kind of do a little bit of everything. Started with piano, moved to drums, got interested in other styles, and that kind of launched me into wanting to pursue music more.
Wow, very cool. You're at a really cool organization called Drumeo now.
Hmm. Yeah, so that's it's been a long time in the making to kind of get to where I'm at right now, but everything kind of developed on each other, or every sort of situation and experience kind of built upon each other. When I was in grade 11 in high school, um, I kind of decided that I wanted to take music to a professional level and wanted to do something career related with music because that's what I love to do, right? So I started looking for another teacher who could really prep me for university and offer me some more career options and things. Um, so through a Facebook post, I saw that Jared Falk, was offering private drum lessons, and he had already had the online thing going for quite a while, but didn't want to lose the personal touch of private teaching. So through that, I started taking private lessons with him and was actually the only student that replied to him. So we started doing lessons at Long and McQuaid in Abbotsford, which is close to where Drumeo is right now. But the drum kit was really bad, and I don't know, like the whole like lesson experience in those little rooms wasn't great. So we're like, oh, we'll just go do lessons at the Drumeo studio, which was just a little bit further away. But then over time, like that turned into helping out with VIP camps and kind of doing like a little bit of an internship, if you want to call it that. Sweeping out the studios, doing shipping out products like DVDs that we used to offer before we were strictly an online company. We used to ship out training packs and workbooks and things like that all over the world. So started doing little jobs like that. Then I went off to university, and while I was there, I would do like drum transcriptions for instructors that would come out to teach. And then I would come back after each semester and kind of just make sure there was some work to do. It's like, I'll do anything. I just want to work in between the time I have off, right? And over those years, I started to get more involved with the company, learn more about all the different departments and sectors of like what makes Drumeo actually function and exist. So I ended up doing some customer support. Like I mentioned, I did shipping. I started writing some articles. I taught my very first YouTube lessons in 2015, which are absolutely hilarious. If you go on YouTube and look those up.
I love like, watching like old videos of yourself. Oh, it's so funny. Man.
It's like you look them up and you just cringe. You're like, oh, it's so awkward. But that's the beauty of doing something for many years, and it just becomes more natural, right? But yeah, over those years, started to do a whole bunch of different stuff, learning more about the company. And yeah, that all started with private lessons and putting all the hard work into that and proving that I really cared about improving my craft and practicing drums. And yeah, just my level of care was really high for what I was doing.
Yeah, wow, that's incredible. Yeah,
it's been really cool. Like even over the past few years, we haven't done them in probably 2 years now, but we've had like VIP camps where we actually get to meet our students face to face.
Oh yeah,
and,
wow.
Like I can say I have friends like all over the world who are drummers who have come out as Drumeo students, and we've just like connected and bonded over playing drums and learning drums as a group of students, right? Like I consider myself a student of drums. Like there's always something more to learn, and it's yeah, it's been really cool over the past few years just to actually get to know the community of drummers who are a part of Drumeo. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think me being a drummer too, it was great throughout this time during the pandemic as well, especially just to keep myself really motivated and everything. It was great to, you know, stay on top of all the amazing content out there. So any drummers watching, definitely recommend the platform. It's such a great opportunity.
Awesome, man.
Now, having said that about Drumeo, do you have any like fun stories or favorite memories of things that during your time with Drumeo? I know that's kind of a hard question.
Yeah. There's I mean, there's got to be a bunch. There's a few I always come back to, and some of these are older, but those are usually the ones that stick with you because they're like some of the earliest experiences. One was the first time we had Matt Gartzka out from Animals as Leaders, he's one of my favorite drummers, but that band is one of my favorite bands, and they had a huge impact on my playing and just like understanding of what's out there in terms of music. But I believe it was 2014 we had him out to Drumeo, and we filmed a live session with him, which was incredible. But after we were done, he's like, so like, what's the plan? Like, what are we doing? I want to keep playing drums. And usually after we have a drummer out on Drumeo, it's like, we'll go for dinner or just hang out. Maybe they want to go back to their hotel or something like that. But Matt just wanted to keep playing drums. So we set up a small 4-piece kit in the back of our studio, and Jared, myself, Dave, we all like cycled through. We all played his kit, and we just like traded solos with Matt after his live session.
Wow.
And just like went back and forth. I think it was like a 20-minute jam that I had with Matt, and I was like 17 at the time, like trading with one of my favorite drummers, super nervous because like I'm 17, like not that great at playing drums, but I'm sitting beside or in front of like one of my heroes. So that was pretty cool, and that's something that's like stuck with me for a long time. And just like his enthusiasm for, or just his like his love for playing drums and just like wanting to do it all the time was super inspiring for me as like a younger drummer, for sure. Two other ones that stick out, these are more like things that drummers have said to me over the years, and one was from Benny Greb. I think this was from 2014 or 2016, I can't remember, but his lesson was called The Art and Science of Groove, right when that DVD came out, which is an incredible product. But we were out for dinner after, and we were going around the table, and someone asked him, like, what is the one thing that you're working on or you wish that you could do better? And he's like, this is coming from Benny. He's like, I wish I could be more in the moment when I'm playing drums. And like, I'm sitting there, I'm like, you want to be more in the moment? Like,
Yeah,
you're
he's so
Benny
in the
Greb.
zone. He's so
Like,
in the
everything
zone.
you're doing is right. It's like, so to hear that coming from someone of like that profile, again, like one of my personal heroes, but someone who, when I look at them as a drummer, like the first thing I think of is like, you are so in tune with what's happening musically and with the people that you're performing with. To hear you say that just means like there's always more, right? There's always more that we can improve. We can always be more in the moment and more engaged with what we're doing as musicians, whether you're a drummer or whether you're any other type of musician. So that was one other one. And the last thing I'll say, from Larnell Lewis, I was like 16 years old, and I knew I wanted to go to university for music. And we had just finished his lesson, and Jared, myself, and Larnell were out for dinner. And I asked him, I said, what's the one thing I should keep in mind, or one thing I should focus on as I go into like these, you could call them like higher pressure situations that I was really nervous for? And the one thing Larnell told me that sticks with me to this day, anytime I sit at the kit, he's like, you always need to play with conviction. So even if you're nervous, even if you're not feeling 100%, you need to go into that situation and you need to convince the audience or the adjudicator or whoever you're playing for that you are 100% confident in what you're doing. And by doing that, you're going to spread that conviction and that certainty to whoever you're playing with and to your audience, right? They shouldn't be able to tell that you're nervous. They should be able to look at the drummer in the back and say, that drummer knows what's going on. They're prepared, all that kind of stuff. So that's something I've taken with me into pretty much every situation. Just going into it, and the focus being on make that performance as convincing as possible and make the audience trust you as the drummer.
Absolutely. That's great advice. Yeah. What did Drumeo do, like response to kind of the COVID pandemic? What's Drumeo been up to, and you as a musician as well?
Yeah. I mean, for us, we were very fortunate to, obviously we're an online company, and over the last 10 years, we've been developing our like trust with our students and our brand. So basically worldwide, we're trusted as like a reliable online resource for music education. So for us, that worked actually really great. Like we had a lot of students who joined our platform and had the time and resources to start learning music, because some other things that they would have done for their hobbies or whatever couldn't happen anymore. So they took to learning music online. And for us, that we were just one of the options that people turned to, which was great. And we were really fortunate to be in that position. But that obviously isn't the case for everyone. If you were a self-employed musician, who wasn't operating on an online platform or something like that, there were a lot of musicians who struggled with that, having to pivot to the online world, coming from only performing in the physical world or only offering lessons face to face privately, right?
Yeah.
So Drumeo, we were very fortunate to be in that position, and we had a lot of new students join us and start playing music, whether that was Drumeo or Pianote or Guitareo. Yeah, so lots of students joining, lots of connections being made, and really other students holding each other accountable through a year and a half where that might have or probably wasn't even possible through other things that they were involved in, right? One of the beauties of Drumeo is it is a community of like-minded students where we're all collectively trying to improve and get better, and there's students to hold you accountable to the things that you're working on. Personally, through COVID, obviously there was no performing happening. Private lessons stopped for quite a while. So I actually ended up setting up a home studio that I could teach over Zoom. And I started filming a bunch of videos for social accounts and stuff like that. I really tried to up my game online during the pandemic. I thought it was like the perfect time to do that while nothing was physically happening in the world. So yeah, I was teaching online. I was filming a lot of content from home, planning a lot of content to film at the Drumeo studio. And that sort of gave me short-term goals to work towards through the pandemic. Because like I know musicians who like really struggled with, they don't have any gigs coming up. So where's the motivation to keep working on something, right? When everything you knew and looked forward to was completely stripped away. So those gave me sort of short-term goals to work towards, filming a course 6 weeks away or filming a YouTube lesson or something like that. Those were things that I could look forward to that got me behind the kit, got me practicing, and kept me pushing forward, basically.
Yeah, for sure. So you mentioned earlier that you are heavily into music education as well. So a question for you, Brandon, is why is music education important to you?
Yeah. I mean, I went through this sort of, what do you call it? An internal debate, let's call it. I was studying music performance in school, but over like the last few years, probably like the last 6 or 7 years, I was teaching privately. I was getting involved in Drumeo, and I was finding that when I could teach a student something and it would click for them, and they would actually have a light bulb moment and be able to do something that they may not have been able to do before, I found that that gave me the same sense of like happiness that I would get playing in front of a crowd or performing with a band. Now, both of those are like I absolutely love doing. I love teaching. I love performing, but I really found that I had a passion for music education, and I also really enjoyed the challenge of finding ways to create educational content online in a way that's the most engaging for a student, um, because there's a lot of content online, but what is going to make a drummer click on your video and actually stick with it and actually gain something from it? What is the best way to present information that's clear, concise, and actually makes it fun for the student on the other end? There's a lot of really dry educational content out there. I find too, like even within certain styles of music, like rock drumming education is very different from jazz drumming education. And there's different teachers known in both of those worlds. But it's like, why can't learning jazz on drums be just as fun as learning rock on drums? And that's just one example. But it's like, how can I make learning jazz super fun for a student wanting to get into it while still honoring the heritage of the style of music, while still like teaching it to the standard of what you would get from a jazz educator. Does that sort of make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, like for me, it's definitely a passion of mine. But I found too that, or I guess I realized, like I'm never going to be one of the world's greatest drummers. Like I've come to terms with that, and that's totally cool. But for me, it's always been about I want to share everything I can with the drumming community and allow them to experience the same joy from playing the instrument that I've experienced over the last like 16 years. Like drumming is the best part of pretty much every day, right? It's you sit down at your kit and it's like, this is where it's at. So how can I present that to someone else and make them feel the same thing when they sit behind their drum kit?
Yeah, 100%. So I have one more question for you. And that is, do you have any advice for young musicians and drummers who might be interested in sort of drumming and pursuing a career in music?
That's a great question. And probably one that changes year to year as the world changes, right?
Yeah, exactly. So as of August 16
Yeah.
or whatever, 2021.
Yeah. No, that's a good question. And I think it depends on, first of all, like what age the drummer is, kind of where they're at in their stage of development, and kind of where they're thinking and like working towards. I would say as a young kid, the goal is like just keep playing drums, love playing drums, find a teacher or education in some way that you can continue developing your skills. As more of like, and this is what I experienced kind of around like age 15 to 18 or so, like if you start to really want to be pursuing a career in music, one thing that I learned from Jared, which was probably one of the most valuable pieces of music career advice that I've ever got, is in today's world, you can't be, let me rephrase, 99% of people working in the music industry don't just play an instrument. So the biggest piece of advice he gave me was don't just play drums, have something else that you can pair with your drumming that's going to allow you to actually have like a prosperous career. So some ideas of what that could be: you could be a drummer who understands and is really good at social media. You could be a drummer who does graphic design and website designing. You could be a composer and a performer. You could be an arranger, music engraver. You could be a writer. For me, that was a big one that kind of got me, kind of like expanded my palette of skills, like writing my first book with Drumeo. I found that I have a real passion for writing, but because I understand how to play and teach drums, that was a useful skill that I could pair with my drumming. Some other ones could be like recording and mixing and mastering, music business, understanding how to manage groups, how to book venues and shows for other artists. There's a whole bunch of different stuff, right? But the main takeaway there is don't just play drums. Have something else that you can pair it with so that you can be an even more valuable asset to yourself as a self-employed musician, or to a company like Drumeo or any of these other music education or music related companies out there. So
Yeah.
that's probably one of the most valuable things that I've learned about like music careers today. Very rarely is there like a, let's say like a Danny Carey of Tool, who's probably, well, I guess he's writing too, right? He's writing with those bands. I guess like a Vinny Colaiuta, who's probably performing like 98% of the time,
Yeah,
right?
right.
So yeah, that'd be my biggest takeaway for people wanting to find a career in music. And probably the earlier you can sort of explore that, the better. But yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So one more quick thing. What we like to do at the very end of the interviews is we like to do a little set of fast five questions.
Nice.
So I've got a couple here for you. You ready?
Let's do it.
All right. Question number 1. What is your favorite movie soundtrack?
Oh man, movie soundtrack. Let me preface this by saying like I've never been like a huge movie soundtrack like fanatic, but some that I've been into recently, I really enjoyed the soundtrack to Soul, the new Disney movie with John Batiste, and I believe Marcus Gilmore and Roy Haynes actually played some drums on that.
Yeah, that was I really enjoyed that soundtrack too, actually. Yeah, I watched that. Yeah.
Also the Hamilton soundtrack.
Yes,
I got to
classic.
see, I saw that I saw the show in New York in 2019.
Wow.
Somehow I found a ticket online. Somehow. That wasn't insanely expensive. But yeah, I saw that show and then I've been listening to the soundtrack like ever since. It's fantastic.
How about instrument you wish you played?
Ooh. If I didn't play drums, I would play tenor sax or I would play bass. I think I'm going to start playing bass next year, though.
That's
I'm going to say that on this interview so you can hold me accountable.
Okay, I will. Yeah, no. Bass is mine would be probably guitar too. I've been like kind of like messing around on keyboards and MIDI bass, not real bass, MIDI bass.
Yeah.
But I would love to just complete that whole thing with guitar,
Totally.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be sweet.
How about hidden talent?
Ooh, hidden talent. Oh, that's a tough one. I thought about this the other day. Came up with something. Let me give you this. I'll give you something that people probably don't know that I do, but we could call it a talent. I haven't gone in a few years, but I used to be really into scuba diving.
Oh, wow.
In tropical waters. So I used to do a lot of like studying on that stuff and like learning about like oceans and like marine life and all that kind of stuff. Haven't gone in a few years, but let's call that a talent.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, that's a good answer. How about your dream vacation spot?
I'd probably spend like a month in Italy.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, Italy would be amazing.
Yeah, probably like half of it checking out like all the historic stuff. And then half like checking out all of the like on the south there's all like incredible beaches and like landscapes and all that kind of stuff. But also the mountains up north too, like as you get closer to the Alps. That would be a pretty cool trip.
Yeah, for sure. And last but not least, favorite concert you attended or your favorite song?
Ooh. I'm gonna give you a few concerts. Rush's R40 tour.
You went?
I
went too. I went to
nice.
I think their very last one in Toronto. Like their last ever.
Crazy. Yeah, I remember I went to that with some friends and I remember paying like I wanted like good seats because I'm like, oh, I don't know how much longer they're gonna tour. So I paid extra for some better seats and I'm so glad I did.
That was the first time I ever saw them live, first and last. Every time I know, I'm like, oh my goodness.
That would have been a huge regret for probably you and me both.
Yeah.
So that show, another one would have been my first time to New York at the Village Vanguard. I saw Marcus Gilmore performing with Gerald Clayton on piano, Joe Sanders on bass. It was a 5-piece band. It was, I think 2 sax players as well. But that was one of the first live concert experiences in my life where I actually couldn't comprehend what was happening. It was so on another level. And I remember sitting there in that venue and I'm like, something is happening. And like, I can't comprehend it. So that was a pretty like surreal experience. And then one other one, when I was in my second year of university in Edmonton, a saxophonist named Tia Fuller, who was one of the sax players in Beyonce's touring band.
Oh, wow. Very cool.
She
Yeah.
was also a prof at Berkeley. She was performing at this venue called the Yardbird Suite with a trio, Mimi Jones on bass, and this drummer by the name of Rodney Ruckus, or he goes by The Ruckus, on drums. And he was actually a student of Tia's at the time, and she took him on tour. And the show opened up with like this like wailing sax, and then the drums came in over top, and she literally was like, he's just like going off like gospel chops, like just ripping around the kit, and she's literally yelling at him like, no, Rodney, no. And like just ripping, and we're all sitting there at this table and we're like, yo, this is insane. So yeah, those are definitely like three highlights. There's of course lots of other amazing live experiences, but those are three standouts for sure.
Did he get called back, or was it just a?
Oh, I bet.
It's
Yeah.
like how to.
It was incredible.
Yeah.
But like crazy.
Yeah, I bet.
Pretty cool.
I bet.
Good
I
times.
love stories like that. That's so cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Brandon. I really appreciate you taking the time today to
Anytime,
chat
man.
a bit about Drumeo and your experience as a musician and a drummer.
Yeah. My pleasure, man. Anytime.
All right. Take care.
Yep. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. See you later.
Thanks for joining us. If you like what you heard, you can learn more about our organization at bandology.ca, which features information about music education, advocacy and research, and our Play a Gig and Bandcamp programs. Follow us on social media for more videos, performance, and interviews on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.